Welcome back, dear sleeper. You've made it through another day, congratulations. The world may have tossed its usual chaos your way, bills, chores, traffic, an argument with the printer. But none of that matters now. Right now, there's only you, your bed, and a story so strange, so delicately disgusting, so gloriously golden that your brain won't know whether to laugh, cry, or gently fall asleep from sheer confusion. Tonight, we travel not through the stars, but through the stream. Yes, that stream. Because once upon a time, and for a very, very long time, humanity was obsessed with pee. Your pee. Their pee. The king's pee. Golden liquid not just as waste, but as wisdom. A sacred diagnostic tool. A healing potion. A crystal ball for your bladder. This isn't fiction. This is medical history. Before blood tests, CT scans, or Google searches about why do I feel weird on Tuesdays, there was urine. Your morning offering held up to the light like a fine wine, sniffed by doctors who claimed to read its secrets like ancient scrolls. There were charts. There were flasks. There were debates. And yes, there was sipping. Sometimes sipping. So take a deep breath in and out. Try not to think about the fact that a medieval doctor might have tasted your pee to see if you were sad. Let the warmth of your blanket wrap around you like a cozy chamber pot lid. Let your limbs grow heavy. Let your eyebrows slowly lower themselves in peaceful disbelief. This is your moment. This is your time. Tonight, we surrender to the liquid logic of the past, to the golden cure. And if you're still awake in a few minutes, we'll begin with a little cup of history. It always begins with a cup. Not ceramic, not glass, but something between a potion bottle and a fishbowl. Wide-mouthed, round-bottomed, and far too proud of itself. It is, of course, the urinal flask. Long before blood work, x-rays, or thermometers, medicine had this, a curious container filled with the yellow thoughts of your kidneys. Doctors once held it up to the light like fine amber. They swirled it gently. They squinted at it. Sometimes they sniffed it. Occasionally, yes, tragically, they tasted it. Why? Because for centuries, urine was the window to the soul. Or at least to your spleen. We're talking ancient times. Hippocrates, Galen, physicians who wore robes, stroked beards, and confidently guessed that your left knee pain was due to an imbalance of phlegm caused by last Tuesday's sour lentils. And yet, among all their wild guesses, one thing united them: pee. Urine was honest, came straight from the inside. It didn't lie unless you drank too much wine or beetroot. Even in ancient Egypt, urine was considered a diagnostic goldmine. There are papyrus scrolls, thousands of years old, that calmly describe the color, smell, and taste of urine as clues to everything from pregnancy to impending doom. If the urine is pale, one text says, then the patient is cold. If it is thick like porridge, another warns, then surely death is browsing the neighborhood. The Greeks took things further. Hippocrates believed that urine reflected the balance of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. You know, the usual ingredients in a balanced breakfast. If you were too melancholic, your urine might be cloudy. If you were angry, perhaps it frothed. If you were about to perish, it might sparkle. The sparkle part is unconfirmed, but the confidence was blinding. By the Middle Ages, uroscopy, the official study of urine, had become a medical art form. Picture this. A patient stumbles into a physician's quarters. The doctor says nothing, only extends his hand for the flask. No questions, no pulse checks, just a dramatic swirl of the sample, a knowing nod, and the diagnosis. You have wind in the liver. Your kidneys are sulking. Or the dreaded, your urine smells like a goat's dream. This is very bad. Physicians of the time relied on something truly magical. the urine wheel. This was a colorful chart, divided into 20 or more shades of yellow, brown, green, red, and occasionally blue. Yes, blue. If your pee was blue, you were either dying or had been recently cursed by a particularly artistic witch. The wheel matched color with meaning. Pale yellow, too much cold air in the bones. Rusty orange, inner heat, perhaps a passionate argument with a neighbor. Cloudy with bits, demons, almost always demons. It became so serious that universities across Europe began teaching courses in uroscopy. You'd have students in robes, sitting in candlelit halls, practicing the fine art of judging pee. They had textbooks filled with tiny drawings of flasks, each one with slightly different urine, annotated with thoughtful captions like, "Good urine, but untrustworthy patient," or, "This one looks like soup. Ask no further." The urinal flask itself became a symbol of medicine. If you look at old medieval paintings of doctors, you'll often spot one thing. They're holding a flask of urine. Always. Sometimes in one hand, sometimes both, like it's a newborn chick. It meant, "I know what I'm doing." It meant, "I am a learned man who has stared into the abyss," and it was slightly cloudy. People trusted it. Patients would walk for miles carrying their precious flask, sloshing gently as they rode on donkeys or trudged through mud. They'd deliver it to the town physician, who might spend a full hour gazing at it from different angles, nodding, frowning, and finally prescribing dried frog legs or a week of silence. And here's the best part. Most of the time it worked. Not because pee diagnosis was accurate, it wasn't, but because the doctor's attention, the ritual, the solemn gaze at the little golden sea, made people feel seen, cared for, believed. That's the secret magic of medicine. Half diagnosis, half performance. So tonight, as you lie there listening, let your muscles melt like medieval reasoning. Let your breath settle into the rhythm of dripping water. And imagine yourself in a wooden room, lit by candlelight. You enter with a small flask warm from your body. The doctor nods. He holds it to the window. The sun catches it just right. He smiles. "Ah," he says, "you are mostly alive. How lovely." At some point, someone didn't stop at swirling the flask. They drank it. It's a question that haunts many corners of medical history. Who was the first brave, bored, or baffling soul who looked at a warm cup of urine and thought, "Yes, this will fix everything"? We don't know their name. We don't know their logic. But we do know they had followers. Urine, once a diagnostic tool, slowly trickled its way into something more sacred, more internal. By the dawn of antiquity, cultures from India to Rome were no longer just observing urine. They were prescribing it. Let's begin in India with the ancient practice of Shivambu Shastra. This centuries-old Ayurvedic tradition treated urine as divine nectar, a liquid imbued with life energy, healing properties, and the kind of spiritual vibes that would make your modern wellness influencer weep with envy. Practitioners believed that your own morning urine, taken fresh and warm, could cleanse the body, sharpen the mind, and purify the soul. Some devotees even believed that aged urine, stored in dark bottles for days or weeks, became more potent over time, like fine wine, or cheese, or a bad idea gaining confidence. Prescriptions varied. Drink a small cup daily. Rinse the mouth after meals. Wash the eyes with it at sunrise. Rub it on the skin for glow. Store it for enemas. Mix it with herbs. Or, if particularly ambitious, use it in ceremonial offerings. The Romans weren't far behind in their enthusiasm. In fact, Roman citizens found an entirely different use for urine: teeth whitening. Yes, you read that correctly. It turns out the ammonia in stale urine worked as a natural bleach. Roman poets like Catullus joked about it, mocking people who had suspiciously white teeth. Entire industries popped up around collecting and selling human urine, particularly from the public latrines, which were numerous and, we assume, enthusiastically aromatic. At one point, the Roman Emperor Vespasian even imposed a urine tax on those who profited from its collection. Imagine a tax audit with the line item, 500 amphorae of peasant pee untaxed. To this day, some public urinals in France are still nicknamed Vespasiennes in his honor. By the Middle Ages, medical texts across Europe began recommending urine for everything from skin diseases to epilepsy. Monks recorded detailed recipes involving warm urine compresses for gout, mixtures of urine and ash for treating baldness, and even instructions for boiling urine down into a sticky resin, sort of like medieval superglue for wounds. One popular treatment involved mixing urine with honey and herbs, then rubbing it on the chest to treat cough. Another involved soaking cloth in urine and wrapping it around inflamed joints. Did it work? Who knows? But it definitely distracted the patient. And then there was urine wine, a curious concoction where patients were advised to ferment their own urine with red wine and spices to create a healing tonic. It smelled like broken trust and tasted like surrender, but people drank it anyway, because sometimes hope is stronger than taste. Not to be outdone, some physicians began prescribing other people's urine. The fresher, the better. Children's urine was considered especially pure, untainted by vice, as one physician poetically put it, and therefore sweet to the humors. Yes, that's real. No, I'm not sorry. Let us not forget the urine bath, a full-body experience in which the patient was submerged in a tub of aged, fermented urine. This was believed to soften the skin, cure rashes, and rebalance the soul. Some texts recommended adding herbs, flowers, or even crushed emeralds to the mix, not for chemistry, but for luxury. Because if you're bathing in pee, you might as well feel expensive. In the Renaissance, even the elite dabbled in liquid cures. Queen Elizabeth I was rumored to use urine as a foot soak for cracked heels. Alchemists experimented with distilling urine to extract mystical salts and essences, claiming that these could transmute metals, cure syphilis, or even extend life. They were wrong, so very wrong, but beautifully, poetically wrong. And yet, through all this golden enthusiasm, one thing remained strikingly consistent. People were desperate to feel better. They didn't have antibiotics, no Advil, no digital thermometer to beep at them reassuringly. So when your back ached, your skin flaked, or your humors felt moody, you reached for what you had. And what you had was mostly water, and slightly you. There's something oddly comforting about that. Gross? Definitely, but also deeply human. Tonight, as your eyes grow heavy, imagine yourself in a small stone cottage. There's a fire crackling softly, a wooden table, a shelf of clay jars, each carefully labeled in Latin. And in the center, a simple flask, glowing amber in the candlelight. Your healer, bald, soft-spoken, and a little too enthusiastic, offers you a warm cup. "You're in luck," he says with a smile. "This batch is particularly fragrant." You hesitate. He nods. You sip, and somehow you feel better already. To the modern eye, it's just pee. To the medieval physician, it was a universe. You see, by the 13th century, urine diagnosis wasn't some casual swirl and sniff affair. No, it had become a deeply structured, almost mystical discipline. There were rules, charts, Latin phrases, and, most importantly, layers. Yes, layers. Doctors believed that urine, once left to settle, would divide itself into zones, each one corresponding to a different organ, emotion, or fate, like a cloudy parfait of your inner self. Let's imagine a typical analysis. The physician sets the flask on a wooden table. The room is dim. A candle flickers. The urine is still warm, a good sign. He waits for it to settle, then slowly lifts it, turning it gently in the light. First, he observes the foam, or spuma. This is the frothy crown at the top. Bubbles, if you will. If the foam was large and lasting, it might suggest excessive heat in the liver. If small and quick to disappear, perhaps a melancholy disposition. If purple, which it never was, death was probably already in the room. Beneath the foam lies the substance or substantia. This is the main body of the fluid, the color, clarity, and movement. Pale and clear, cold and moist, dark and cloudy, heat and corruption. Glittering specks, either kidney stones or a wizard's prank. Then, at the bottom, lies the sediment or residuum. Sediment was always a subject of fierce debate. Too much? You were excreting excess melancholy. Too little? Insufficient expulsion of corrupted humors. Tiny red flecks? Demonic interference. Obviously, some manuals even insisted the urine flask had zones like a medieval MRI. The top third showed your brain and spirit, the middle section your chest and liver, and the bottom your bowels and reproductive system. So if something looked off in the middle of the flask, your lungs were probably gossiping. This wasn't guesswork. It was doctrine. Doctors would spend years memorizing urine wheels, color charts, and mystical diagrams. A yellowish-green hue with floating threads and a bitter smell? Heat in the gallbladder and sadness in the soul. A dull brown hue with no scent? Apathy. Possibly poetry. But diagnosis wasn't just visual. It was temporal. Time of day mattered. Morning urine was considered closest to truth, the purest sample. Afternoon urine was tired. Evening urine was suspicious. Midnight urine was dramatic and prone to exaggeration. A good physician might ask, "When did you urinate? Before or after your quarrel with your neighbor? Had you eaten goose? Or thought about geese?" Patients would try to be honest. Some even brought urine diaries, recording their bathroom sessions with the dedication of a court scribe. These notes would be handed over, reviewed, annotated. Some were turned into urine poetry. Not good poetry, but sincere. Nowhere was this more elaborate than in the courts of Europe. Royal physicians were often tasked with analyzing the sovereign's urine daily. A king's bladder was no trivial matter. The entire health of a nation might rest on whether his sample swirled to the left or the right. Take, for example, the French court in the 16th century. The king's urine was collected each morning in a golden-topped flask by a gloved valet, delivered under guard to the royal physician, who would analyze it in silence. Courtiers waited anxiously in the hallway, listening for clues. If the doctor exited with a smile, the kingdom relaxed. If he frowned, rumors spread like plague. The same was true in the Vatican. Popes had their urine examined by a circle of learned men. Some tests were so elaborate they took hours. The color was compared to sacred oils. The scent measured against incense. The temperature taken with a silver thermometer carved with angels. In one instance, a pope's urine was declared mildly joyous, and the city of Rome held a small festival in his honor. Yes, that happened. Well, it could have happened. And that's enough. What's fascinating is how personal it all was. A physician might say your urine is restless, or it lacks conviction, or it's dreaming of lemons. This wasn't metaphor. This was medicine. And the patients believed it. Because in a world where illness struck suddenly, mysteriously, and often fatally, any explanation, no matter how poetic, felt better than silence. A diagnosis was hope, even if it was cloudy and warm. So tonight, as you lie in the gentle dark, imagine yourself as royalty. Your chamber is cool. The sheets are crisp. A valet kneels beside your bed, holding out the morning flask. You nod regally. Hours later, your physician enters, adjusting his robes. He clears his throat. "My lord," he says, "your urine is determined, slightly romantic, and faintly amused. All signs point to recovery. You exhale. The nation is safe once more." At some point, the line between folk medicine and "what are you doing" becomes very blurry. And nowhere is that more goldenly true than in the realm of historic urine remedies. Let's begin with something noble: burns. In medieval Europe, one of the most common treatments for burns from fire, boiling water, or dragon, just in case, was fresh urine. Warm, sterile, and always available, it was poured gently over scorched skin to draw out the heat and cool the anger of the fire. Physicians recommended it specifically from young boys, as it was considered the purest stream. There were even battlefield manuals recommending that if no ointment could be found, the brave should urinate upon their wounded brethren without shame. It was camaraderie. It was first aid. It was warm. Then we have toothaches, the eternal enemy of medieval happiness. One old English remedy reads, "Take thine own urine, boil with sage and salt. Hold it in the mouth for a count of 3 prayers. Spit toward the sun. If the ache persists, thy sin is deeper than bone." Effective? Probably not. Satisfying? In a very strange way, yes. And of course, there's eye treatment. Ancient Romans, Greeks, and even Renaissance doctors advised applying urine-soaked cloths to the eyes to treat styes, redness, or blurry vision. One manuscript describes how to drip the urine of a healthy maiden directly into the eye for clarity of sight and soul. No maiden available? Use your own. Just be quick and aim well. Now let's talk madness. In early medical texts, urine wasn't just a treatment, it was a diagnostic of the mind. Physicians would inspect its clarity and movement to determine emotional states. But in folk magic, it went even further. If someone in your village was acting strangely, talking to birds, dancing at night, or wearing trousers made of cheese, people might suspect possession or madness. The solution? Make them drink their urine under moonlight while reciting a psalm backwards. Yes, that's real. Or at least real enough for someone to write it down with a quill. And then there's rabies. Rabies, also known as hydrophobia, was one of the most feared diseases in the medieval world. One folk remedy involved swallowing 9 drops of dog's urine, followed by 9 drops of your own, repeated every morning for 3 days. This was supposed to confuse the dog spirit within. If that failed, you were advised to shout insults at your own reflection and wear garlic in your socks. Science? No. Commitment? Absolutely. Now let's pivot to something more refined: alchemy. The great alchemists of the Renaissance were fascinated by human waste. They believed that within the human body lay all the elements of the cosmos, and urine, as a product of the body, was a distilled reflection of the universe itself. Alchemists boiled it, distilled it, fermented it in sealed jars for weeks. Why? To extract something called the philosophical salt, a mythical crystalline substance believed to be the key to transformation, immortality, or at the very least, turning lead into something more interesting. Some claimed that aged urine produced a powerful volatile spirit, a kind of proto-ammonia that could dissolve gold. Others thought it revealed the secrets of time. One alchemist called it a golden serpent coiled in steam, which is poetic but also deeply concerning. These experiments took place in basements. For obvious reasons. In the world of witchcraft and magic, urine took on other roles. A popular protection spell from 17th century England involved collecting a few drops of an enemy's urine and sealing it in a jar with nails, hair, and herbs. The jar was then buried under a threshold to trap their malice. If your cow had stopped giving milk or your bread kept burning, this was a go-to solution. In Icelandic grimoires, a common invisibility spell required bathing your eyes in the urine of a black cat under the aurora borealis. There's no record of anyone successfully disappearing, but there are many records of disappointed sorcerers with irritated eyes. And then we arrive at firefighting. In early industrial towns, urine was used to douse fires. Not on purpose initially, but public urine barrels placed along alleyways became a surprise source of liquid in emergencies. Over time, it was discovered that aged urine, rich in ammonia, actually helped suppress flames, especially on cloth or wood. Some towns even kept designated pee buckets near forges and bakeries. One city's official fire brigade instructions included the line: "In case of sparks upon hay, douse quickly with chamber pot if God provides." God or your bladder. Let's not forget cosmetics. The same ammonia that bleached Roman teeth found its way into early skin brightening treatments. Renaissance beauty books sometimes recommended morning urine as a toner. Mixed with crushed pearls, it was said to banish freckles and awaken the cheeks. One French noblewoman wrote in her diary, "It stings at first, but then I feel as if kissed by the angels." Angels, of course, who smell like barnyards. All this might sound unbelievable. It should, but it also tells us something timeless. People will try anything to feel better, look younger, or outwit the mysteries of illness. And when nothing else works, they'll turn to whatever the body provides, even if it comes in a warm little flask. So tonight, as your breath slows, imagine a cozy cottage lit by firelight. On the shelf, herbs, jars, and small glass vials labeled with looping script. The air smells faintly of rosemary and other things better left unnamed. Your healer approaches. For your cough, they say, handing you a cup. You sip. It's sharp, unusual, vaguely herbal. You ask, "What's in it?" They smile. "Just a little something personal." You nod. Somehow you feel golden. By the 1800s, something unsettling began to happen. Doctors started asking questions. Uncomfortable, inconvenient, very unmagical questions. Questions like, what is urine? What's actually in it? Why does it taste like that? And with the rise of the Victorian scientific revolution, medicine, that cozy world of swirling, sniffing, and interpreting bladder moods, began to turn cold, clinical, and precise. Welcome to the age of analysis. Suddenly, urine was no longer a mysterious golden fluid holding the secrets of your liver's attitude. It became a chemical soup, a measurable, quantifiable liquid filled with urea, ammonia, salts, sugars, and occasionally troubling surprises. Doctors began boiling it, distilling it, testing its pH, and even placing drops under newly invented microscopes. What they saw wasn't the soul, but cells, crystals, casts, and, in unfortunate cases, parasites. It wasn't romantic, but it worked. One of the great turning points came with a single sweet discovery: diabetes. Long before anyone knew what insulin was, physicians in the 17th and 18th centuries had noticed a strange fact. Some patients had sweet-tasting urine. Literally, they tasted it, like tea, with a trembling pinky raised, we assume. They called it diabetes mellitus, honey flowing, a condition where the body failed to properly process sugar, and so the excess glucose spilled into the urine. For centuries, the main way to detect it was, quite simply, to dip your finger in and give it a taste. And you thought your doctor's appointment was awkward. Eventually, Victorian doctors developed chemical tests to detect sugar in urine, including copper-based solutions that would turn bright colors in the presence of glucose. These were the humble ancestors of modern test strips. Even more impressive, though just as strange, was the pregnancy test. Before the advent of hormones and HCG kits you buy in pharmacies, physicians discovered that pregnant women's urine could influence animals. In the 1930s, the Ascium-Ezondek test involved injecting a woman's urine into a young female mouse. If the mouse ovulated within a few days, the woman was likely pregnant. Later versions used frogs. Yes, frogs. One test required watching to see if the frog laid eggs after being peed on. It was science, and also oddly personal. Despite these advances, the ritual never fully disappeared. Even in the most pristine Victorian laboratories, many doctors still clung to older habits. Observing color in glass flasks, noting sedimentation, and yes, sometimes sniffing. Because for all its sterility, modern medicine still relied on experience, on instinct, on the oddly comforting sight of a slightly cloudy, golden flask held up to the light. In medical schools, students were still trained to read urine's language. If it smelled fruity, diabetes. If it reeked of ammonia, possible infection. If it had a pink tint, perhaps blood. If it was dark brown, liver trouble. And if it looked like ale and smelled like mushrooms, call a priest. And while much had changed, one thing hadn't. Urine was still everywhere. Urine was used to tan leather, dye cloth, clean laundry, and even set gunpowder. Victorian chemists found it rich in nitrogen and essential for fertilizer. In a very strange twist of fate, human waste became part of industrial progress. Factories purchased urine by the barrel. Public collection buckets were set up on street corners. People were paid, often children, to collect and transport night soil and its golden cousin. In this way, the body became a factory and the bladder a humble export system. Even in literature, urine made appearances. Victorian poets and authors occasionally referenced its use in medicine, sometimes reverently, sometimes mockingly. One satirical medical journal included the fake headline, "Her Majesty's Royal Physician declares the King's water to be perfectly ambitious with hints of nostalgia." There was, it seemed, still room for poetry, even in the age of test tubes. And yet, even as we stepped into the modern era, some beliefs endured. In rural areas across Europe, urine therapy still lived on. Grandmothers advised rubbing it on bee stings. Farmers used it to treat cracked hands. Sailors swore by it for jellyfish stings, a belief still weirdly popular, despite being scientifically questionable. In certain circles, morning urine was still thought to contain first truths, the residue of dreams, the whisper of organs, a map of the soul's nightly journey. And so we find ourselves in a strange in-between. One foot in science, the other still ankle-deep in folklore. Because as much as we want medicine to be cold and sterile, sometimes we want it to be human, to swirl, to shine, to feel like someone is looking into something personal and mysterious and saying, "I see you. I see your insides." And they are slightly cloudy, but promising. So tonight, as your breath slows and the world blurs at the edges, picture a quiet London clinic. Gas lamps flicker. The doctor adjusts his spectacles. On the table, a flask. Not ancient, not mystical, but somehow still sacred. He lifts it, turns it gently, and smiles. "Well then," he says, "your kidneys seem cheerful today." You nod. You sleep. And somewhere, in a dusty cabinet, another flask is waiting for morning. The full circle flow. And so we return to the present, the sterile clinic, the bright lights, the little plastic cup. A nurse hands it to you like a sacred chalice. You shuffle into the bathroom. There's a paper label with your name on it. A small pen scribble, clinical, cold, quiet. But behind that tiny container is a history thousands of years deep, absurd, poetic, and very yellow. You've made it through the foamy layers of folklore, through ancient scrolls and Roman smiles, through medieval jars and royal sniffers, through frogs injected with destiny, and Victorian scientists with copper beakers and raised eyebrows. And yet, it's not over, because believe it or not, people still drink their urine today. Yes, right now, somewhere, possibly while you're listening to this. They call it urine therapy. Some claim it boosts immunity. Others believe it treats acne, arthritis, or even cancer. You'll find books, blogs, YouTube channels with unsettling enthusiasm and far too much eye contact. One famous advocate once said, "It's sterile, it's free, and it comes from me." That, of course, could also describe your tears. But here we are. Some even go further, storing it, aging it, rubbing it on their skin, washing their hair with it, using it in enemas. Ancient practices rebottled in modern packaging. Science rarely agrees, but the belief persists. Why? Because the human body is mysterious, and we desperately want to believe that its byproducts, even the embarrassing ones, might contain answers. Hope, magic, meaning, and urine, in its golden absurdity, offers a strange kind of comfort. The something we create without thinking. Something intimate yet universal. Private signal. A soft internal whisper. So of course people listen. Even science still listens. Today's urine tests can detect infections, kidney function, drug use, pregnancy, hormone levels, hydration, and even traces of stress. A single sample can paint a portrait of your day, what you drank, what you ate, how your liver's feeling, whether you've been sleeping well, whether your body is whispering secrets or screaming quietly from within. It's no longer a potion, no longer divine, but still, it tells a story. And maybe that's the real reason people always return to the flask, the goblet, the golden vial. Not because urine was magical, but because it felt like you. A distillation of your life. A reflection of your body's inner weather. In times when medicine was uncertain, when doctors muttered in Latin and diseases struck like ghosts, you wanted something, anything that seemed honest. And urine, well, it didn't lie. It didn't flatter. It didn't keep secrets. It simply flowed. So tonight, as your eyes grow heavier and the night deepens into silence, I leave you with this. You are a miracle of plumbing, a temple of tubes, a creature made mostly of water and ambition. And when history looked for answers, when priests and peasants, queens and quacks, scholars and sorcerers searched for truth, they didn't always look to the heavens. They looked to the chamber pot, because sometimes the most ridiculous things are the most enduring. And sometimes the cure isn't in the medicine, it's in the story. So rest now, noble listener. Let your kidneys hum. Let your thoughts drift like golden clouds in a warm glass bottle. And if you dream tonight of beakers, of bubbling alchemy, of ancient physicians with gentle hands and questionable breath, know this: you've just completed the oldest medical examination in the world. And you passed brilliantly. Good night, and may your stream always be steady. You'd think we'd stop. After microscopes, after vaccines, after antibiotics, CAT scans, and genome sequencing. After we landed on the moon and invented the burrito blanket, you'd think we'd finally be done with drinking our own pee. But no, because in the 20th century, the age of reason, rockets, and increasingly disappointing fashion, urine made a comeback. The term was urotherapy, or shivambu if you preferred the ancient Ayurvedic branding, or just water of life if you were feeling poetic. Books appeared. Bookstores shelved them without irony. Titles like Your Own Perfect Medicine, Golden Fountain, and Miracles of Urine Therapy promised health, energy, even spiritual awakening. One best-selling manual claimed urine could cure everything from asthma to cancer to shyness. And people listened. Not fringe lunatics in caves, but yoga teachers, life coaches, alternative health gurus, and a small but committed number of actors who spoke with impressive conviction and suspicious breath. By the 1990s, TV documentaries began nervously exploring the trend. Journalists visited small apartments filled with jugs of aged urine. They filmed smiling retirees pouring golden liquid into teacups. They interviewed calm women in linen robes who swore that urine foot baths ground the soul. There was even a man in Germany who stored his urine in wine bottles and labeled them by mood. "This one is from the day my cat died," he said, cradling it. Very grounding. Some followers got creative. They used it as hair conditioner, eye drops, skin toner, toothpaste. One woman claimed it reversed her menopause. One man claimed it cured his divorce. No one asked how. Some preferred it fresh. Others aged it like fine whiskey, allowing ammonia to build up for a more potent spiritual sting. They described the flavors like sommeliers, bold, grassy, sharp with citrus overtones, a little disappointed. But why? Why, in a world of pill organizers and precision medicine, do people still turn to self-produced potions? The answer, like all answers, begins in the gut. Or rather, the gut feeling. Modern medicine, for all its miracles, often feels cold. Rushed. Distant. Doctors with screens typing while you talk. Pills without explanations. Surgery without ceremony. You, a chart, a number, a problem to solve. But alternative medicine? That's different. It listens. It glows. It lights candles. It offers rituals. And urine, absurd, intimate, slightly horrifying, is the ultimate ritual of self. You don't need permission. You don't need insurance. You just need a moment of silence and a cup. There's something deeply human about it. Gross? Absolutely. But honest. And in a world full of artificial promises, honest counts for something. Some psychologists argue that uropathy appeals to a sense of control, the idea that your body holds the solution, that healing isn't out there, but in here. A closed-loop ecosystem of hope. And while science rolls its eyes, people keep sipping. Even some celebrities flirted with it. Rumors swirled about pop stars using urine facials. An actor once admitted to peeing on his own jellyfish sting because it seemed like the right thing to do. Spoiler, it wasn't. Gwyneth Paltrow probably thought about bottling it. Madonna might have done it for fun. Bear Grylls definitely did it on camera. But beyond the glitter, the trend had roots in real cultural anxieties. Fear of pharmaceuticals. Mistrust of corporations. Medical trauma. The endless longing to reconnect with natural living, even if that meant drinking something your bladder just urgently rejected. Urine became a symbol of purity, paradoxically. Unmediated, unfiltered, personal. Your body's way of saying, here's what's going on, and you replying, thanks, I'll take it to go. It also became part of a wider rebellion against sterility, literal and metaphorical. Where modern culture worshipped bleach, hand sanitizer, and crisp white tiles, urine offered something older. Something earthy. Animal. Unapologetically weird. It was anti-clean. It smelled like defiance. And let's be honest, some people just wanted attention. Golden attention. Urine was also claimed loudly by the spiritual wellness crowd. Your urine contains the blueprint of your consciousness, one guru said, as if trying to confuse the immune system into enlightenment. Others claimed it healed the chakras, balanced karmic fluids. One YouTube channel insisted it was liquid light. Another said it helped them channel ancient Egyptian truths through the bladder. We can't make this up. But they did. Meanwhile, doctors quietly issued statements. No evidence. High salt, waste products. Please stop putting it in your eyes. But no matter how many studies were published, the belief endured. Because science tells you what's true. But rituals tell you what feels true. And what feels more real than holding your own body's message in your hand, warm and weird, and thinking, maybe this knows something I don't. Tonight, as you drift further into sleep, imagine a quiet kitchen at dawn. A woman in her 60s pours a small glass, She raises it to the window. The sun touches the rim. She nods to herself. No audience. No YouTube. Just trust. Or a man alone in a cabin placing a single drop on his wrist like perfume. He breathes in as if smelling the past. And smiles. These are not jokes. These are people searching as people always have for meaning in the mirror. And if that meaning comes filtered through the kidneys, so be it. So let yourself rest now. You are whole. You are strange. You are more than the sum of your fluids. And your fluids? Well, they're doing their best. Let's be honest. Urine is not polite. It doesn't whisper. It doesn't wait for the right moment. It just is. And perhaps that's exactly why it keeps coming back, not just in medicine, but in art, in culture, in protest, and even in spiritual rebellion. Because sometimes the things we're most ashamed of become the loudest messengers of truth. Let's start in the gallery. In 1987, American artist Andres Serrano shocked the world with a single photo. Piss Christ. A plastic crucifix submerged in a tank of the artist's own urine. Golden light. Holy glow. And immediate outrage. Politicians fumed. Religious groups rioted. But the image remained. Because Serrano wasn't just being gross, he was asking a question. What happens when the sacred meets the bodily? When beauty swims in waste? When reverence and revulsion share a jar? And the answer was people couldn't look away. Because deep down they recognized something. That the clean lines of modern life, the white walls, the perfume ads, the dental smiles are sometimes lies. The body is not clean. It leaks. It stinks. It disobeys. And urine is its signature. In punk culture, this was embraced loudly. Punks didn't just sing about rebellion, they smelled like it. Clothing soaked in beer, sweat, and sometimes worse. Public urination as performance. Not because they loved it, but because it broke the rules. It reminded everyone that civilization is just 3 bad meals away from the alley. And in a way, urine became anti-capitalist. You can't brand it. You can't mass produce it. You can't package it without, well, problems. It's personal. Non-transferable, wildly off-script. The Dadaists knew this too. Marcel Duchamp, with his infamous urinal sculpture, Fountain, 1917, dared the art world to see function as form and filth as idea. It wasn't just a joke, it was a question. If we put the body in the museum, what do we learn? Later artists would follow. Urine on canvas. Urine in jars. Urine as commentary on war, poverty, gender, shame. Each time it sparked outrage. Each time it sparked reflection. Because you can't ignore it. You can't pretend it doesn't happen. You can only pretend it doesn't matter. And that, maybe, is the point. Even in religion, the body's fluids walk a strange line. Some ancient texts speak of urine as impure, requiring ritual cleansing. Others view it as part of the body's natural prayer, a cycle of giving and letting go. In Taoist internal alchemy, for instance, the body is a vessel and all outputs, breath, sweat, sexual fluids, urine, are seen as reflections of inner balance. To waste them casually is to leak your essence. To reabsorb them metaphorically or otherwise is to honor your completeness. And while Western medicine dismissed this as nonsense, something lingered. Even today, people quietly wonder. If it came from me, why is it so wrong to touch it? In an age of filters and antiseptic smiles, urine is truth. Not poetic truth. Not inspirational quote truth. Just raw, undeniable bodily fact. It doesn't care about politics. It doesn't try to sell you anything. It just tells you in its strange golden language. You are alive. Maybe that's why it's lasted. Not because it's beautiful. Not because it's healing. But because it's honest. And sometimes that's enough. Tonight, as you drift into the last folds of sleep, I invite you to imagine something very old. A stone floor. A wooden chair. A clay flask still warm in your hands. Outside, the wind howls through the trees. Inside, the healer looks at you not as a problem to solve, but a body to listen to. He lifts your flask. He studies it like a sunrise. And he says, This is very you. You smile, because somehow that feels okay. You are not sterile. You are not filtered. You are not always sweet-smelling or wise. You are complicated, porous, human. And tonight, your story ends not with a cure, but with understanding. That even in the most absurd, embarrassing, golden parts of life, there is wisdom, there is history, there is meaning, and, above all, there is sleep. There is something you remember, a dream, a sensation, a warm mistake under the sheets, a tiny shame, a first loss of control, not a word spoken, but a feeling sudden, spreading, undeniable. This, for many, is the first memory of the body's truth. Long before heartbreak, before math, before your name meant anything, you learned what it meant to be human through a puddle and a gasp, through wet pajamas and soft footsteps in the hallway, through the hush of a parent saying, "It's okay, we'll clean it up." Urine is often our first shame, not because it hurts, but because it cannot be hidden. You feel it before it arrives. You try to stop it. Sometimes you fail, and the world, in all its rules and carpets, tells you control is good, leaks are bad. So we grow up tightening, holding in, clenching and planning and excusing ourselves politely, until one day we find ourselves in adulthood where everything leaks again. Tears, secrets, bladders. Urine returns in strange ways. In hospitals where dignity peels away with the gowns. In nursing homes where silence and softness cover beds that have stories. In moments of laughter so loud that the body says enough. I'm real. And in those moments, there is no room for filters. Only honesty. Only the strange, unspoken truth of the porous self. We don't talk about it. We joke about it. We suppress it. But deep down, we all carry a silent agreement. Let's pretend we're made of stone. But we're not. We're bags of water and hope, with tubes and fears and daily floods. And urine, bless it, is the body's most consistent love letter. You're still here, still flowing, still alive. In psychology, they call this containment. The illusion that we can box up every thought, every emotion, every mess. But the bladder disagrees. It has no patience for denial. It doesn't care about your meeting, or your date, or your dignity. It speaks when it wants, and you obey whether gracefully or in a sprint. And this, oddly, is power. Because in a world obsessed with composure, the need to pee is the great equalizer. Presidents, poets, pilots, popes, every one of them at some point whispered, "Excuse me," and walked briskly toward a door marked with a strange little figure in pants. No one escapes it, not even heroes. There's an old story about Napoleon. On the eve of battle, he reportedly refused to pause his horse for relief. Instead, he calmly allowed his body to speak beneath him, soaking his saddle as he issued orders. It shocked his generals. It inspired his troops, not because he lacked shame, but because he had clarity. Even great men must leak. Even legends must surrender to flow. And so, dear listener, let us take a moment here in this quiet room of sleep to honor the stream. Not as waste, but as memory, because every drop contains the history of your day. The coffee, the nervous water before an interview, the soda after the movie, the tea with your grandmother. It is, in its own odd way, autobiographical. And maybe that's what made it sacred. Not the color, not the foam, but the fact that it held your story without judgment. The flask was always more than glass. It was a mirror, a map, a truth. Tonight, let yourself rest without clenching. Let the walls of control grow soft. Let the body speak, not in language, but in warmth. You are more than your posture, more than your politeness, more than your clean clothes and careful sentences. You are a stream. You are a rhythm. You are still a little wild. And that's okay. Let it all go now. The scrolls, the scholars, the gold-glowing flasks and royal physicians, the battlefield compresses, the apothecary jars, the books that promise too much. Let it all dissolve like salt in warm water into quiet. There's no need to remember dates anymore. No need to laugh at the absurdities. No need to hold your breath through the strange parts. You've arrived at the edge of the story, and all that remains is you. Still, heavy, human. For all our centuries of swirling and sipping, labeling and lashing, we never really sought the cure, not truly. We sought something else. Something simple. Something soft. A sign that our bodies, despite everything, the pain, the noise, the mistakes, still worked. Still whispered. Still flowed. Urine was never just liquid. It was always a message. A message from inside. I'm doing something. I'm still here. I haven't given up. And that is enough. Even now here, in the stillness of this moment, your body hums with quiet operations. Cells divide. Blood loops and turns. Your breath rises like a tide and returns home. And far below, in the silent chambers where water becomes meaning, your body writes another message. No ceremony. No caption. Just function. Just flow. You don't need to be proud of it. You don't need to post about it. You don't need to explain it to anyone. It's yours. Like a dream you don't have to remember. Like a song your bones keep humming even after the music stops. And so we end this story not with a bang, but with a sigh, a slow exhale, a loosening of thought, a letting go. Let go of judgment. Let go of control. Let go of the myth that you are a machine. You are a river. A warm, breathing landscape of strange miracles. You are not clean. You are not perfect. You are not sealed shut. You leak. You feel. You flow. And that is something holy. Tonight, as your eyes drift into the deeper dark, you might dream of rivers. Of chambers and keys. Of amber light and glass bottles lined up on the edge of memory. You might hear soft voices. A doctor murmuring in Latin. A monk blessing the morning stream. A child laughing at a warm accident. Your own voice saying softly, "It's okay. I'm still here," because you are. Still here. Still flowing. Still human. And while no medicine is perfect, while no cure can fix everything, sometimes the most absurd things, the ones we hide, the ones we flush away, are the ones that remind us we are alive. So sleep now. Let the cure take hold, not in your body, but in your heart. The cure of listening, of laughing, of letting go. Good night. May your dreams be strange. May your bladder be calm. And may your life, in all its wild, leaky brilliance, always find its way.